My name is Sarah Brooks. I'm 23 years old. On the morning of my college graduation, I stood alone at a bus stop, dressed in my cap and gown. The fabric scratched against my skin, stiff and uncomfortable. And the cheap cardboard cap kept slipping no matter how many times I adjusted it. It was a bright, golden morning in Charleston, the kind of day that should feel like a fresh beginning. But for me, it felt hollow. Just down the street, in the driveway of our family home, a completely different kind of celebration was happening. My parents, Evelyn and Richard, were standing beside my younger sister, Chloe, and in front of them sat a brand new pearl-white Tesla. The sunlight reflected off its polished surface, the chrome handles gleaming like something out of a commercial. A massive red ribbon stretched across the hood, dramatic and perfect. My mother was crying real tears, the kind that came from overwhelming joy. She wrapped Chloe in a tight embrace. "Oh, my sweet girl," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear from across the street. "You deserve everything." My father stood beside them, smiling with pride, his posture straight and confident. He placed a hand on Chloe's shoulder, his watch flashing in the sunlight. "The safest car on the road for our daughter," he announced proudly. Chloe laughed, jumping in excitement, her designer dress flowing around her. She looked radiant, effortless, celebrated. She had just finished high school, and me, I had just completed 4 grueling years of college working 3 jobs, surviving on barely any sleep, pushing myself to the limit just to make it to this day. And my graduation ceremony was a 45-minute bus ride away. No one asked how I was getting there. No one even looked at me. I stood there like I didn't exist, like I was invisible, like I was just background noise in someone else's perfect family moment. Then the bus pulled up. The brakes hissed as the doors slowly opened, letting out a tired, mechanical sigh. I stepped inside, handed over a wrinkled dollar bill, and moved toward a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away, I turned my head and looked back. They were still there, still smiling, still laughing, still taking pictures in front of that car. They didn't notice I had left. That bus ride, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The sticky seat beneath me, the low hum of the engine, the unfamiliar faces around me, it all felt more real than the family I had just walked away from. I stared out the window as the city blurred into streaks of color, and somewhere in that silence, I made a promise to myself. Not loud, not emotional, just cold, solid, final. This feeling, this invisibility would end. Their favoritism would not define who I become. And one day, I swore, they would drive for hours, maybe even across states, just to see my name somewhere they never believed it would be, a place they could never ignore again. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, but only if you truly believe that everyone has their own worth, and no one has the right to belittle it. I'd really love to know where you're listening from, and what time it is there right now. I'm curious to see just how far this story will reach. This story is fictional, inspired by real-life situations. It's been enhanced with the help of AI to make it more vivid. But every emotion you hear is genuine and deeply felt. Now, let me take you back and show you how it all really began. Growing up in our home in Charleston felt like living inside a perfectly curated showroom where my sister was the centerpiece, and I was just a label no one stopped to read. The house itself was stunning, a large coastal-style home with white columns, wide windows, and a wraparound porch where my mother and Chloe would sit in the evenings, their laughter floating through the humid air. Inside, every wall told Chloe's story. Photos of Chloe as a baby, Chloe's first steps, Chloe smiling on my father's shoulders at a football game. Chloe crowned as homecoming queen, sparkling under bright lights. There was only one photo of me, a small frame, barely noticeable, tucked behind a much larger picture of Chloe riding a horse. In it, I looked about 7 years old, standing slightly off to the side in a plain blue dress, as if even in the photo I already knew where I belonged. I understood what it meant long before I could explain it. My father, Richard Brooks, was a man who saw the world in numbers, value, and return. A successful property investor. He evaluated everything the same way, even his own family. To him, Chloe was a perfect investment. She was beautiful, outgoing, effortlessly charming, the kind of person who lit up a room without even trying. He poured everything into her. Private dance lessons, a personal trainer, expensive clothes that cost more than my entire semester of textbooks. His love wasn't unconditional, it was strategic. He gave her everything, and in return, she became the daughter who made him look successful. Every evening when he walked through the door, the first thing he would ask was always the same. "Where's my girl?" He never meant me. I was the opposite of Chloe in every way. Quiet where she was vibrant, focused where she was carefree. And in my father's eyes, my independence wasn't something to be proud of. It was proof that I didn't need anything from him. My good grades were expected. Nothing more than meeting a standard. I remember one night when I was 15. I had just been accepted into a highly competitive summer science program at Stanford. I sat at the dinner table, waiting for the right moment. My heart pounding. "I got accepted into the Stanford program," I said, trying to sound calm. My father glanced up briefly from his plate. "The science thing. Good. That'll look strong on your college applications." And that was it. He turned back to Chloe. "So, have you decided on a dress for the spring gala? Your mother and I were thinking we should take you shopping this weekend." Just like that. The moment was gone. My achievement dissolved into the background, like it had never mattered at all. My mother, Evelyn, operated differently. She didn't deal in money or status. She dealt in attention. And somehow, she had none left for me. Chloe was her entire world. She managed her schedule, helped with every project, stayed up late talking through her problems, celebrating every small win like it was monumental. They were inseparable. And I was always just outside that circle. I tried. Though, I really did. One Saturday, I found her in the garden, carefully trimming her roses. I had been reading a book I loved. And for once, I wanted to share something personal. "Mom," I began. "I'm reading this story and the main character reminds me of..." She didn't even look up. "That's nice, sweetheart," she said softly. "But can you go start the laundry? Chloe has a big competition tonight and her outfit isn't ready yet. We're in a bit of a rush." Her tone was gentle, kind, even, but the meaning was unmistakable. Chloe's needs were urgent. Mine could wait. I nodded and walked back inside, the words I had wanted to say fading away before I ever got the chance to finish them. Holidays made it even clearer. Christmas in our house felt like a performance designed entirely for Chloe. One year, my father surprised her with a horse, an actual horse, boarded at a nearby stable. She screamed with excitement, throwing her arms around him as the rest of the morning turned into a celebration of her happiness. Gift after gift, laughter after laughter. And me, I unwrapped a set of academic books and a new desk lamp. "To help you keep up your studies," my father said with a satisfied nod. It wasn't cruel, it was practical. But it said everything. Chloe was meant to be adored. I was meant to work. The moment that defined everything happened when I was in 8th grade. I had spent 3 months building a project for the state science fair, a solar-powered water desalination system. I poured everything into it, every afternoon, every weekend, every ounce of focus I had. And when I finally finished it, I truly believed, for the first time, that maybe this would be enough to make them see me. I gave everything I had to that project. Weekends disappeared in the garage, my hands busy soldering tiny wires, adjusting tubes, testing and retesting until everything worked perfectly. I burned my fingers more than once. I stayed up late with physics textbooks spread across my bed, forcing myself to understand every detail. That project became more than just a school assignment. It became proof. Proof that I was worth noticing. So when they called my name for first place at the state level, the feeling hit me like a wave. My chest tightened. My vision blurred for a second. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. I carried that oversized trophy all the way home, replaying the applause in my mind, imagining my parents' faces when they saw it. But when I walked through the front door, I found them in the living room, completely absorbed in Chloe. She was standing in the middle of the room, practicing lines for a school play. 3 lines. That was her entire role. My mother sat on the couch, coaching her gently. My father leaned against the wall, watching with quiet focus. I stepped closer, lifting the trophy slightly. I won, I said, unable to hide the excitement in my voice. My mother glanced at me briefly, offering a soft smile. That's wonderful. Sarah, really, she said. But can you keep your voice down for a second? Chloe's trying to concentrate. My father looked at the trophy for a moment. State level, he said. Impressive? Richard Brooks's daughter, the scientist. His tone was flat, distant, like he was commenting on something he had read in the newspaper about someone else. There was no hug, no questions, no pride. The weight of the trophy in my hands suddenly felt ridiculous. I nodded quietly and walked to my room, placing it on my desk. It didn't feel like an achievement anymore. It felt like a reminder that no matter how hard I tried, it would never be enough. A few days later, Chloe stood on stage and delivered her 3 lines perfectly. My parents were on their feet before anyone else, clapping, cheering, smiling like she had just won an award. That night, we went out for ice cream to celebrate her performance, and that was when it finally became clear. It was never about what was accomplished. It was about who accomplished it. For a while, I tried to change. I tried to be more like Chloe. I forced myself to be louder, more outgoing, more effortless. I practiced smiling more, talking more, fitting into a version of myself that I thought they might finally accept. But it never felt right. It felt like wearing something that didn't belong to me, tight, uncomfortable, wrong. And they noticed. Don't try so hard. Sarah, my mother once told me gently, just be yourself. What she didn't realize was that I had never been given another option. I became the quiet one, the independent one, the one who didn't ask for help because she already knew the answer. No. That independence wasn't strength. It was something that had been carved into me over time, a scar I learned to live with. By the time I reached my final year of college, my life had turned into a blur of exhaustion. The last week felt like I was sprinting through the final stretch of a marathon I had been running for 4 years. My world shrank down to 3 places: the library, my dorm room, and the harsh, fluorescent-lit buildings where I took my final exams. Every day was a careful balancing act. Studying, finishing my thesis, working the last of my overnight shifts with campus security. I was constantly tired, but underneath all of it, something new was growing. Hope. A quiet, fragile hope. Because this wasn't just the end of college, it was my way out. I had marked the date on my calendar months in advance. Saturday, May 17th. Graduation day. In my mind, it had become something almost unreal, something important enough to finally matter. This time, they wouldn't be able to ignore it. This wasn't a small trophy or a side achievement. This was a degree, with honors, something real, something undeniable. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed they would have no choice but to see me. It felt real, solid, something no one could brush aside this time. I had spent so many nights imagining it. I could see them sitting in the audience. My father with that familiar, serious expression, but with a quiet pride hidden behind it. My mother dabbing at her eyes, pretending she wasn't emotional. Afterward, we would go out to celebrate. A proper lunch at a nice restaurant, the kind of place we only ever went to for Chloe. I pictured raising a glass, giving a small, graceful speech, and for once, everyone would actually listen. That image lived so clearly in my mind that it almost felt like it had already happened. It was that vision that carried me through everything. The sleepless nights, the stress, the constant pressure, the night before my final exam. I gave myself a break and walked to a small boutique near campus. I spent the last $70 I had on a simple blue dress. Nothing flashy, just clean, elegant, and quietly confident. When I brought it back to my dorm and held it up in front of the mirror, it felt like more than fabric. It felt like the future, the version of me I had fought so hard to become. The next day, when I walked out of my last exam into the warm May sunlight, the relief was overwhelming. I had done it. After everything, I had actually made it. I almost felt weightless walking back to my dorm, like something heavy had finally lifted off my shoulders. I couldn't wait to tell them. I sat on my bed, took a deep breath, and called my mom. "Hi, Mom," I said, smiling without even realizing it. "I'm done. My last final is over, and I passed everything. I just wanted to go over the plans for Saturday." "Oh, hi, sweetheart," she replied casually. I could hear the faint clinking of dishes in the background, like she was out to lunch somewhere. "That's great news. We knew you would." What plans were those again for a second? I thought I had misheard her. "My graduation," I said, my voice softening. "The ceremony is at 10. I sent the tickets and parking pass last month. I was thinking we could all go out to lunch after. My treat." I added that quickly. I didn't want this to sound like I needed anything from them. I just wanted them there. There was a pause. A long one. I could hear her speaking quietly to someone else. My father. Most likely, when she came back. Her tone had shifted. Softer. Careful. "Oh, honey. About Saturday." My stomach tightened instantly. "I'm afraid something's come up. We're not going to be able to make it." Everything inside me went still. What I whispered. "What do you mean you can't make it? What could be more important than my graduation?" There was a brief shuffle, and then my father's voice came through, sharp and direct. "Sarah, your mother is right. We won't be there. Chloe's graduation gift is being delivered that morning. It's a strict schedule. We need to be present to receive it." I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. "Her graduation gift," I repeated slowly. "Her graduation isn't for another 2 weeks." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "It's a car, Sarah," my father replied. impatience slipping into his tone, like I was asking something obvious. A Tesla. It's a major gift for a major milestone. The delivery is coming from out of state, and Saturday is the only available slot. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. The words echoed in my head, hollow and absurd. I pictured them weighing the decision, carefully choosing between their daughter's once-in-a-lifetime college graduation and the arrival of a car. The image was so ridiculous it almost didn't feel real. Then my mother's voice came back, soft and sympathetic in a way that somehow made it worse. You know how Chloe is, sweetheart. She's been so excited about this. It means everything to her. Finishing high school is such a big moment, and we think it's really important to be there for things like that. You understand, don't you? No, I didn't understand. I couldn't understand how something I had worked for, fought for, sacrificed for, could be so easily dismissed. All those nights without sleep, all the jobs, all the pressure I carried alone, and they were choosing not to come. For a car. For Chloe. So, you're just not coming? I asked. And I hated how my voice cracked at the end. Don't be so dramatic. Sarah, my mother said gently, it's just the ceremony. All that formality for a piece of paper. The important thing is that you earned your degree. And we are very proud of you. Proud. The word felt empty. You've always been so independent. She continued. You'll be fine. Just take the bus or call a ride. You always figure things out. There it was. The truth of how they saw me, wrapped up in a few simple sentences. I was the one who didn't need anything. The one who would handle it. The one who didn't matter enough to show up for. We'll celebrate when you come home, she added brightly, as if that fixed everything. And you have to see the car. It's beautiful. Pearl white. Chloe is absolutely thrilled. I couldn't respond. My throat felt tight, like I was trying to swallow something too heavy to move. Everything I had imagined, every detail of that perfect day, collapsed all at once. Gone. Okay, I whispered. It was the only word I had left. Wonderful. We'll talk soon. Love you. Sweetheart. The call ended. I sat there on my bed, the phone still pressed against my ear, listening to the empty tone on the other end. Slowly. I lowered it. My eyes drifted to the blue dress hanging on my closet door. Just hours ago. It had meant something. Now it looked foolish, like a costume for a celebration that was never going to happen. Something inside me shifted in that moment. Not loudly, not violently, just a quiet, irreversible break. The last small piece of hope I had been holding on to disappeared, and, in its place, there was nothing left but something cold, something steady, something that didn't expect anything from them anymore. If you think my parents made the right choice by prioritizing my sister's car delivery over my graduation, comment. The right choice. But if you feel that what they did was hurtful and unfair, then comment neglectful parents. I really want to hear your thoughts, because sometimes the way we see a story says a lot about who we are. College was never a dream for me. It was survival. My partial scholarship covered tuition, but everything else was on me. Rent, food, books. Even the smallest things like toothpaste felt like obstacles I had to climb over alone. The $100 my parents sent each month wasn't help. It was a gesture. Just enough for them to feel like they had done something. So I built my life around endurance, while other students were going out at night. I was putting on a stiff security uniform, preparing for another overnight shift, from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. I walked silent campus paths and sat in a small guard station watching flickering security screens. That little room became my world, under harsh fluorescent lights. I studied, wrote papers, and drank terrible coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. It wasn't good, but it kept me awake. When the sun came up, I didn't rest. I dragged myself back to my dorm, slept for a couple of hours, then went straight to class. Every day felt like moving through fog. I learned how to look awake even when I wasn't, how to take notes while my mind begged for sleep. More than once, I woke up mid-lecture with ink on my face where I had fallen asleep on my notebook, but I didn't stop. After classes, I took a bus downtown to my unpaid internship at a small marketing firm called Carter and Vale. The office was cramped, messy, and always slightly chaotic. I wasn't really an intern. I was free labor. I made coffee, filed paperwork, answered phones, ran errands no one else wanted to do. But I paid attention. I listened to how clients were pitched. I studied marketing plans left on desks. I stayed late after everyone left, teaching myself design and digital strategy using whatever resources I could find. I didn't have the luxury of wasting that opportunity. That routine left no space for anything else. No friends, no parties, no real life outside of work and survival. I have to work became my answer to everything. And slowly, the world around me faded away. The only glimpse I had of what normal college life looked like came through Chloe's social media. At 3 a.m, sitting alone in that guard station, I would scroll through her photos. She was always smiling, always glowing, at a formal event in a beautiful dress, on a ski trip in Colorado, on a beach vacation, captioned with something like "Best trip ever. Thanks, Mom and Dad." Meanwhile, I was eating a protein bar for dinner and taping the sole of my worn-out shoes back together. It wasn't just the money, it was how easy her life looked. Like everything just worked out for her. And mine didn't. The unfairness of it didn't explode into anger. It settled into something colder, heavier, a quiet weight inside my chest. But I learned how to use it. Every photo she posted became fuel. Every reminder of what I didn't have pushed me forward just a little harder. There were moments when it almost broke me. I remember one week during midterms. I had taken extra shifts, barely slept, and lived on vending machine snacks and cheap coffee. By the time I walked into my calculus exam, I could barely think. When I walked out, I knew I had failed. The numbers had blurred together on the page. I went back to my dorm, sat on the floor, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not quietly, not controlled, just exhaustion. Total, overwhelming exhaustion. For a moment, I wanted to give up. I wanted to call my parents and admit that I couldn't do it anymore. But then something stopped me. An image. Chloe smiling on some beach, carefree and effortless. And my mother's voice echoing in my head. "You'll figure it out." The tears stopped. Something inside me hardened again. I wiped my face, stood up, and took a deep breath. There was no safety net waiting for me. No one was coming to help. So I made myself a promise. This wouldn't break me. It would build me. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of loneliness, it would become the foundation of something bigger. A life so strong, so undeniable, that one day, they wouldn't be able to ignore me anymore. Mr. Carter saw it before anyone else did. He saw that I wasn't there just to fill a line on a resume. He saw something sharper. Hunger. While the other interns counted the minutes until they could leave, I stayed. I asked for more work. I reorganized old client files no one cared about. I rewrote website content just to practice. I left notes on his desk with ideas for campaigns he hadn't even asked for. Most of the time, he barely reacted. A nod, a quiet grunt. But every now and then, he would glance at me over his glasses and say, "Not bad. Sarah, not bad at all." And somehow, coming from him, that meant everything. The moment that changed everything came on a gray, rain-heavy Wednesday. The office felt different that day. Quiet in a way that wasn't normal. A major client had just dropped the firm. A local auto dealership that had been keeping the business afloat. Losing them meant trouble. Real trouble. Mr. Carter walked out of his office looking exhausted, like something inside him had deflated. He carried a thick, dust-covered file and dropped it onto my desk. "Here," he said flatly. "Dead leads. Businesses we couldn't land or couldn't afford us. Go through it. Make a spreadsheet. Just stay busy." To him, it was nothing. Busy work. But when I opened that file, something shifted. It didn't feel like a graveyard. It felt like opportunity. Inside were stories, real ones. There was a woman named Linda who ran a tiny bakery called Sweet Crumbs. Her file had a handwritten letter about recipes passed down from her grandmother, along with a blurry photo of a nearly empty shop. There was a man named Victor who owned a small auto repair garage, built by his father decades ago. Loyal customers loved him, but he was losing business to big chains with bigger budgets. There were dozens more. A tailor, a bookstore owner, a craftsman who built guitars by hand. They all had one thing in common. They were good at what they did, but no one knew they existed. For 2 weeks, I buried myself in those files. I didn't just organize them. I studied them. I searched for them online, finding outdated websites, abandoned social media pages, businesses that had been left behind by a world that had moved on without them. They weren't failing because they lacked skill. They were failing because they were invisible. And suddenly, I understood something in a way I never had before. I wasn't just looking at businesses. I was looking at myself. The overlooked daughter. The one no one invested in. The one who had to fight just to be seen. The world celebrated people like Chloe. Polished, supported, effortlessly successful. But what about the rest of us? The ones working quietly in the background, building something real with no one watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop. The idea didn't come slowly. It hit all at once. What if someone actually fought for them? What if there was a company that didn't chase big corporate clients, but instead focused on people like Linda and Victor's small businesses with real stories, real passion? What if visibility wasn't something reserved for those who could afford it? What if it was something earned through effort? Through meaning, I sat up in bed, my heart racing. This wasn't just a thought. It was a direction, an agency built for the unseen. Not just marketing, something more. A way to give people a chance. A lifeline. The name came to me almost instantly. Bright Trail Digital. Because that's what it would do. Light the way forward for people who had been stuck in the dark for too long. From that moment on, I couldn't think about anything else. Every spare second I had, I spent in the library, not studying for exams, but learning everything I could about business, marketing, and building something from nothing. I read books I barely understood at first, took notes until my hands hurt, filled pages with ideas, plans, pricing models, strategies designed specifically for people who didn't have much to spend. I wasn't just imagining it anymore. I was building it, piece by piece. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like something I was chasing. It felt like something I was creating. I used the design tools at my internship whenever no one was watching. Late at night, after everyone had gone home, I created a simple, Clean logo, nothing flashy, just something honest. Then I printed 100 business cards on thick cardstock, holding them in my hands like they were something far more valuable than paper. The day after my graduation, I didn't go home. I took every dollar I had saved over 4 years, $2,347, and made the biggest decision of my life. I found a listing for a small storage room in the basement of an old building just outside downtown Charleston. It was barely more than a concrete box. No windows, damp air, the faint smell of mold clinging to the walls. $300 a month. It was everything I could afford. I bought a secondhand laptop from a pawn shop and a cheap desk and chair from a thrift store. I carried everything down into that basement myself. That was it. That was the beginning of Bright Trail Digital. My first target was a small bakery I had read about in those old files. Sweet Crumbs. I walked in early one Tuesday morning, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Behind the counter stood a woman named Linda, her apron dusted with flour. The smell of fresh bread filled the room, warm and comforting. But the place was empty. I introduced myself and started talking, my voice shaking at first. I told her I believed in what she had built. I told her I had a plan to help her reach more people. She listened, polite but tired. "Honey," she said gently, "I've heard promises like this before, big ideas, big costs. I just can't afford it." I had practiced this moment over and over in my head. "You don't have to pay me," I said. She blinked, surprised. "Let me work for you for a month. I'll build you a website. I'll run your social media. If nothing changes, you don't owe me anything, and you keep everything I make." She studied me for a long moment. I knew what she saw. Not confidence, but determination. Something real. "All right," she said finally, a small smile forming. 1 month. That month changed everything. I spent every day at her bakery, taking photos of her food, capturing the details no one had ever seen. I sat with her for hours, listening to her story, her grandmother's recipes, the meaning behind every dish. I turned that into a website that felt alive, warm, personal. I created an Instagram page, posting images that made people stop scrolling. I ran a small ad campaign targeted to people living nearby. It wasn't big, but it was enough. The following Saturday, there was a line outside her door. People came in holding their phones, asking for pastries they had seen online. By the end of the month, her business had multiplied. She came to my office one afternoon, tears in her eyes, and handed me a check. It was more than we had agreed on. That moment stayed with me, because for the first time in my life, I had earned something that felt real, not given, not overlooked, earned. Word spread faster than I expected. Linda told a mechanic named Victor. Victor told a tailor. The tailor told a bookstore owner. One by one, they came. My client list grew quietly, steadily. I wasn't just some girl working in a basement anymore. I was becoming something else. The person people turned to when they needed a chance. My days blurred together into long stretches of work. 16 hours, sometimes more. I did everything. Met clients, built websites, wrote content, designed campaigns, cleaned the office at the end of the day. It was exhausting, but it felt different from before. This wasn't survival anymore. This was purpose. And it gave me something I had never felt before. Control. After a year, the basement couldn't hold it anymore. I had more clients than I could manage and just enough profit to take a risk. So I did. I signed a lease for a real office in a renovated warehouse in the River District. High ceilings, exposed brick, sunlight pouring through massive windows. For the first time, I stood in a space that felt like proof of everything I had built, and I realized this was only the beginning. The rent for that office was more than everything I had owned just a year before. Signing that lease felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying, and at the same time, exhilarating, because for the first time, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something real. A real office meant I couldn't do everything alone anymore. So I started hiring. My first hire was Maya Collins, a graphic designer I found through a freelance platform. She was sharp, creative, and had a dry sense of humor that cut through my overthinking when I needed it most. Then came Daniel Reed, a quiet writer with a talent for turning simple business stories into something powerful and human, one by one. The team grew. I wasn't just looking for talent. I was looking for people who understood what it meant to be overlooked. People who had something to prove. People like me. Our office became more than a workplace. It became a shared mission. We were a group of underdogs helping other underdogs finally be seen. The energy was intense. Long hours, late nights, cheap takeout, too much coffee. But no one complained. Because for the first time, the work felt like it mattered. Our breakthrough came from somewhere unexpected. A small tech startup reached out to us. They had built a new app, something innovative. But no one would take them seriously. Bigger agencies had already turned them away. Too small, too risky, not worth the investment. But I saw something different. I saw the same fire I had felt in myself. So I said yes. We took them on for far less than we normally would have charged. It was a gamble, but it was one I believed in. We gave everything to that launch. We crafted a story around the founders, something authentic and relatable. Maya built a visual identity that made the brand impossible to ignore. Daniel shaped the messaging into something people could connect with instantly. And when we launched, it spread. Fast. The campaign took off across the city. People talked about it, shared it, paid attention, within weeks. The app climbed to the top of the charts. 6 months later, the startup was acquired in a multi-million-dollar deal, and everywhere they spoke, in every interview, they mentioned us, Bright Trail Digital. Overnight, everything changed. We weren't just a small agency anymore. Calls started coming in from other cities, bigger clients, bigger opportunities. People wanted to know who we were. I started getting featured in business magazines, invited to speak at events. At 24, I was running a company worth millions. But one moment stayed with me more than all the headlines. I was sitting on a city bus, on my way to a major meeting with a potential client. And as I looked out the window, I saw one of our ads plastered on the side of another bus passing by. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I looked around. I was still riding the bus, running a company that was growing faster than I had ever imagined, and still taking the bus. The irony hit me so hard it almost made me laugh. That evening, I walked into a car dealership. Rows of luxury cars lined the showroom floor, polished and perfect, and right near the front, there it was. A pearl white Tesla, almost identical to the one Chloe had received. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I turned and walked past it, out to the used car lot in the back. That's where I found it. A 3-year-old Jeep Wrangler, dark green, a few scratches, mud still clinging to the tires. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. It felt like me. I walked inside, found a salesperson, and said, "I'll take the Jeep. I'll pay in full." The look on his face, I'll never forget it. Driving that car off the lot wasn't about showing off. It was something quieter, stronger. Every mile I drove felt earned. This wasn't a gift. It was the result of every sleepless night, Every sacrifice, every moment I kept going when it would have been easier to stop. That car meant freedom and dignity, more than anything expensive ever could. About a year later, something even bigger happened. A venture capital firm from New York reached out. They had been watching our growth, studying our work, paying attention to what we were building. They invited me to meet with them. I flew out, stepping into a world that felt completely different from where I had started. Glass buildings, boardrooms, people who controlled companies worth more than I could even imagine. For a week, I sat across from them, answering questions, defending my ideas, explaining what made Bright Trail different. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove that I belonged. I already knew I did. They questioned everything: my numbers, my strategy, my decisions, my vision. I sat across from them in those glass-walled rooms, surrounded by people who had built empires, people who were used to being the smartest ones in the room. But I wasn't intimidated, because in my mind, I wasn't there with them. I was back in that security station, alone, tired, eating cheap crackers at 3 in the morning, trying to stay awake long enough to finish an assignment. Compared to that, this was nothing. They couldn't scare me. So I didn't just answer their questions. I challenged them back. I negotiated hard, not just for the money, but for something far more important: control, purpose. I made it clear that Bright Trail Digital wasn't going to turn into another agency chasing big clients and ignoring the people we were built to serve. We would keep our mission. We would keep our voice. And if they wanted to partner with me, they had to accept that. On the final day, they made their offer. They valued my company at $25 million. I looked at the contract in front of me, and when I signed it, my hand didn't shake. Not even once. That night, I flew back to Charleston. I didn't call my parents. I didn't even think about it. Instead, I called my team. We went out to the most expensive restaurant in the city, something none of us would have ever imagined doing just a year earlier. And we celebrated. Not just the deal, but everything it represented. Every late night, every risk, every moment we kept going when it would have been easier to quit. It wasn't just my victory. It was ours. The girl who had once been told to take the bus now had the power to buy the entire system if she wanted to. The years that followed moved faster than anything I had ever experienced. Everything expanded. New offices opened in cities I had never even thought about before: Atlanta, Denver, Seattle. I was constantly traveling, living out of suitcases, making decisions that affected not just me, but hundreds of people. My world became numbers, strategy meetings, and endless calls. And somewhere along the way, I realized something. I had become the person I once dreamed of being: independent, respected, successful. The pain from my childhood didn't disappear, but it became quieter, covered over by everything I had built. I had created a new family, my team, people who believed in me, who worked beside me, who saw me, and my real family. They became distant, a memory I no longer touched. For almost 5 years, there was nothing. No calls, no messages, no attempts to reconnect. And I told myself I preferred it that way. Until one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in a strategy meeting at our headquarters, surrounded by my leadership team, discussing a major campaign for a national client. The room was alive with energy, ideas flowing, voices overlapping. And then, my phone vibrated. I usually ignored it, always, but something made me look. Just for a second. One word appeared on the screen: Mom. Everything around me faded. The voices, The conversation, the room, it all blurred into silence. My chest tightened so suddenly it felt like I couldn't breathe, like something from the past had reached forward and grabbed hold of me. Memories rushed in all at once. Her voice, her distance, the way she had turned away from me without a second thought. The feeling hit just as hard as it always had, like no time had passed at all. "Sarah, are you okay?" someone asked, their voice pulling me back. I blinked, forcing myself to focus again. "I need to take this," I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like mine. I stood up, steadying myself, and walked out of the room, step by step. I made my way to my office. The door closed behind me, shutting out the noise. In front of me, the city stretched out through the glass windows. Everything I had built, everything I had earned. I stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, trying to calm the storm inside me. Then I picked up the phone and answered. "Hello." My voice came out colder than I expected. "Sarah. Oh, thank goodness. It's really you. I wasn't even sure you still had this number. It's been so long." It was my mother's voice. Exactly the same. Sweet on the surface, but carrying that familiar undertone I had spent years trying to forget. "I do," I replied, keeping it short. "Well, I know you must be incredibly busy, but I just had to call. Your father and I are so proud of you. He saw your feature in Forbes, the national one, and bought copies for everyone. And that partnership deal, $25 million. I just sat there and cried. She laughed softly, like it was all so touching. "Our little girl. A CEO. Can you believe it?" The words felt wrong. I had never been their little girl. Not really. I said nothing, let the silence stretch. But she kept going, as if nothing was unusual. "We were just saying it's been far too long. We would absolutely love to come visit. See your office. Hear all about everything. Maybe this weekend, we could take you out to dinner." For a moment, I couldn't even respond. 5 years of nothing. No calls, no apologies, and now they wanted to show up, like nothing had happened. Not for me, for what I had become. I felt something inside me shift, something cold and clear. "This weekend won't work," I said. "Next Wednesday at 2. I have 1 hour." There was a brief pause, then her voice brightened again. "Oh, that sounds perfect. We're so excited. It'll be like a real family reunion." The call ended, and I stood there, staring at my phone long after the screen went dark. The days leading up to Wednesday were restless. I couldn't focus. Small things irritated me. It felt like something unfinished was about to surface. At exactly 1:55 p.m., I stood by my office window, looking down at the street below. I saw them arrive. My father stepped out of a brand new black Escalade, polished and imposing. Behind him, Chloe pulled in with her white Tesla. It looked exactly the same, untouched. Perfect. A quiet reminder of everything. I asked my assistant to bring them up. When the elevator doors opened, I was already standing there, calm, composed. My mother rushed forward, wrapping me in a hug that felt more like a performance than anything real. "Oh, Sarah, look at you. So elegant. And this office? It's even more stunning in person." My father stepped forward next, offering his hand. His eyes scanned the room, taking everything in, measuring, evaluating. "You've done well," he said simply. Not pride, not warmth, just acknowledgement. Chloe stood behind them, scrolling on her phone, barely looking up. And in that moment, I realized nothing about them had changed. Chloe barely looked up from her phone, offering a distracted, "Hey," before returning to whatever held her attention. I led them through the office, my tone calm, controlled, almost rehearsed. I showed them the creative spaces, the open work area filled with energy, the small details we had built with intention. I introduced them to my team, people who had helped turn an idea into something real. They nodded, smiled politely, but I could see it in their eyes. They didn't understand it. They saw success, money, a polished surface. They didn't see the years underneath. We ended the tour in my office. My mother admired the view, her voice filled with admiration that felt almost too perfect. My father ran his hand along the edge of my desk, assessing, measuring, calculating. And then, she said it. "Sarah, seeing all of this, it's incredible, truly inspiring. And Chloe, she's always been creative, just like you. She has this amazing idea for an online fashion store. She just needs a little guidance." Her eyes met mine. "With your experience, your resources, you could help her get it started." There it was. The real reason they were here. Not to reconnect, not to apologize, to ask, to take. After everything, I was still just a solution to their problem. Silence filled the room. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let it sit there, heavy and uncomfortable. For a moment, even my mother's smile faltered. Chloe finally looked up, watching me now, waiting. My father stepped in, his voice steady, confident. "Let's be practical. Sarah, she has a strong concept, suppliers lined up. What she needs is support. You've built something impressive here. It wouldn't take much for you to help your own family. A small investment. Some of your team's time. It's the least you could do. The least you could do." I turned slowly toward the window instead of answering. Down below, in the parking lot, Chloe's white Tesla gleamed under the sunlight. Perfect. Untouched. A symbol I knew too well. For a second, I felt it again. That version of me, standing at a bus stop, holding everything together while being completely invisible. My father mistook my silence for hesitation. He placed a sleek business plan on my desk. Confident. "We've already mapped it out. This could be a family venture. You invest. You launch it. And we consider it a return for everything we've done for you." That sentence settled something inside me. Not anger. Clarity. I walked back to my desk slowly, picked up the document, felt its weight, then set it aside. I sat down. Opening the top drawer, their attention sharpened instantly. I pulled out my personal checkbook. Not the company's. Mine. "You mentioned returning a favor," I said quietly. "Then let's be precise." I looked up at my father. "How much was a bus ticket in Charleston? 4 years ago?" Confusion crossed his face. "What are you talking about, the bus?" I said evenly. "The one I took to my graduation. The one you told me to figure out myself." The room shifted. My mother gasped softly. Chloe froze. I wrote slowly, carefully. $1. In the memo line, I added 2 words. "Bus fare." I tore the check out and held it toward him. "Take it," I said, my voice steady. "This covers everything. Financially, emotionally. Everything you ever gave me." He stared at it like it meant something he didn't want to understand. Then his expression changed. Anger. "After everything we've done for you," he snapped. Something inside me finally broke through. "What exactly have you done?" I asked. My voice rising for the first time. "Ignored me, dismissed me, chose her over me every single time, left me alone to build everything I have." I met his eyes. "This isn't an insult. It's an invoice. The room went silent. He grabbed the check, his hand trembling, then threw it back onto the desk. "We're leaving," he said sharply. My mother followed, shaken. Chloe lingered for a second, confused, before turning away. The door closed behind them, and I stood there, not triumphant, not relieved, just still. After they left, everything went quiet. Not just the room, my entire world. The silence followed me everywhere. My office, my car, my apartment. For years, I had been driven by something intense, something relentless. A need to prove them wrong, to show them what they had missed. But now, that fire was gone. What replaced it wasn't relief. It was emptiness. I had said everything I had held inside for years. I had faced them, stood my ground, and ended it. And yet, nothing inside me felt healed. The victory didn't feel like a victory at all. It felt hollow, like I had reached the finish line of a race I didn't even want to be running anymore. For days, I moved through life without really being present. I went to work, led meetings, made decisions, but it all felt distant, like I was watching myself from somewhere else. My team noticed. I could see it in their eyes. The concern they didn't voice, but no one asked. And I was grateful for that. One night, I stayed late at the office, sitting alone with a spreadsheet open in front of me. I wasn't reading it. I was just staring. That's when my eyes drifted to a photo on my shelf. It wasn't my family. It was me and Linda, standing in her bakery, both of us laughing, covered in flour. It had been taken on the 1-year anniversary of her business turning around. I remembered that day clearly. The energy, the joy, the pride in her voice when she talked about how far she had come, and the feeling I had standing there beside her. That was real. That mattered. That had nothing to do with my past. And slowly, something inside me shifted. I realized that what I had done back there in my office wasn't the end of anything. It was just a moment, a reaction. If I wanted something meaningful, something lasting, it couldn't come from tearing something down. It had to come from building something better. I thought about the girl I used to be, standing at that bus stop, holding everything together while feeling completely invisible. And I knew there were so many others just like her. Students working jobs late into the night, skipping meals, carrying pressure no one saw, trying to build a future with no support behind them. They weren't weak, they were strong, but they were alone. And that's what needed to change. The idea came to me clearly. Not just a scholarship, something bigger, something that could actually support people like that. That could give them what I never had: guidance, stability, belief. I called it the Forward Path Foundation, a way to take the hardest moment of my life and turn it into something meaningful. I threw myself into it completely. I used everything I had built through Bright Trail: connections, resources, people who believed in what I was doing. I put $10 million of my own money into it to start. We designed the program to cover more than just tuition, housing, books, emergency support, because sometimes it's not the big things that make people quit, it's the small ones. And the most important part: mentorship. Every student would be paired with someone who could guide them, support them, remind them that they weren't alone. When the applications came in, there were thousands. I read every single one. Each story felt familiar. Different lives, same struggle. And then I found one that stopped me. A girl named Emily Carter, top of her class, passionate about literature, dreaming of becoming a teacher. Her story felt close, too close, like I was reading a version of my own past, and in that moment, I knew exactly why I had built all of this. Emily wrote about her parents with a kind of honesty that hurt to read. They loved her, she said, but they didn't believe in her dream. To them, education was impractical, a waste of time. One line stopped me completely. She wrote that if she chose to go to college, she would be on her own, and they wouldn't be there at her graduation, not unless she proved she was successful enough by their standards. Successful enough. I had heard that my entire life, just never in words that clear. I called her myself. When I told her she had been awarded the first full scholarship, she went silent. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then she started crying. Not quietly, not politely. It was the kind of cry that comes from years of holding everything in. "We believe in you," I told her softly. "You are more than enough." A year later, we held our first foundation gala. All of the students were there. Meeting them in person changed something in me. They weren't just stories anymore. They were real, strong, resilient. Emily stood on stage that night, confident and steady. "This didn't just pay for my education," she said. "It gave me a community. It gave me support. It reminded me that I'm not alone." I sat there, listening, and for the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not from success, not from money, but from seeing someone else rise. That was my answer. Not revenge. Purpose. Years passed. The company grew. The foundation grew. And so did I. The pain I once carried faded into something quieter, something stronger. One evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, a billboard on the highway, showing one of our students, with the words, "Your journey starts here." Standing off to the side was my mother. Then another message came. "We're proud of you." No apology, no explanation, just those words. I stared at the screen for a long time and felt nothing. Not anger, not relief, just calm. I typed back, "Thank you. I made it on my own." And for the first time, I truly meant it. Because this was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I never needed them to be right. And if you've ever felt invisible, just know this. You're not alone. Have you ever been in a situation like mine? I'd truly love to hear your story. Sometimes, sharing it is the first step toward healing. If you were in my place choosing to let go, stop seeking their approval, and build your own life. Right, I'd do the same, so I know I'm not alone in that decision. If you would choose the opposite to reconnect and try to change your family's mindset and behavior, right, try to change them. And if you have a completely different approach, please share it with me. Your perspective might be something I've never considered. Because in the end, there isn't just one right answer, only different paths we choose to walk. There was a time I believed being seen meant being chosen by the people I loved most. I worked harder, tried longer, and waited quietly for a moment that never came. But life taught me something deeper. Your value does not come from someone else's recognition. It comes from what you choose to build when no one is watching. I learned that pain can either break you or shape you. And sometimes, the greatest strength isn't proving others wrong, but choosing to move forward without needing their approval at all. We all carry invisible battles, but those struggles can become the very foundation of something meaningful, not just for ourselves, but for others too. If this story resonates with you, I want you to know that your journey matters. Your voice matters. You are not invisible here. If you believe in stories like this, Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video so more people can feel less alone. And I'd truly love to hear your thoughts in the comments because your story might be the light someone else is looking for. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.
Welcome to Family Confessions. Our stories go beyond entertainment, helping viewers recognize toxic behaviors, understand boundaries, and reflect on their relationships, while reinforcing self-worth and the strength to heal and move forward. Each video follows a structured workflow ensuring quality and value for our audience. Thank you for being here.